Saturday, 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. Top 13 matchup between ninth-ranked Ole Miss Rebels and the LSU Tigers. Nighttime in Baton Rouge. Ole Miss is a slight favorite right now. It's a 12th all-time meeting between Ole Miss and LSU as ranked teams, and LSU has the edge when they are both ranked. It's the 113th playing of the Magnolia Bowl. LSU leads the all-time series 65-43-4. Ole Miss has, however, though, won 2 of the last 3, but LSU has won 7 straight in Baton Rouge. So it's going to be very, very interesting. The last top 15 meeting between these two teams was when Nick Saban was patrolling the sideline for the Bayou Bengals and Eli Manning was the quarterback for the Ole Miss Rebels. It's pretty wild because LSU beat Eli and the 15th ranked Ole Miss Rebels 17-14. That handed the Rebels their only conference loss of the season, which prevented them from clinching the SEC West, but it did give them a share, their only share in SEC history. Nick Saban and that 03 team went on to win the national championship. So, going to be wild. This is going to be a big one. I look forward to being on the call alongside Sean McDonough, Molly McGrath, there from Baton Rouge. Question number 1. Is the loser out of the playoff picture? Now, a lot of us have wondered, is the regular season going to be somewhat watered down as a result of the expanded playoff? And I think this game is an indicator that it might be a tiniest bit watered down, but not so much because it feels like a second loss for LSU or Ole Miss would basically keep them out. And part of that has to do with what remains on the schedule. Ole Miss still has to go to Arkansas. They still have Georgia that comes to them. And right now, I don't know about y'all, I don't love the matchup between Ole Miss and Georgia. Not right now. LSU, on the other hand, they go to Arkansas as well. They're at A&M. They got Alabama. Those 3 games all take place in the next 30 days. So do you think they can navigate through that unscathed in the event in which they lose to LSU this weekend? Or lose to Ole Miss this weekend? I think that's a tough thing to envision. So is the loser out? I think depending on what happens around them is possibly a yes. Because I think the loser certainly loses control of their own destiny, which is not a good spot to be in when considering what's happening in other conferences. Question 2, what's better? LSU's offense or Ole Miss's defense? Now, LSU, maybe you haven't paid a ton of attention, and it would be understandable if you hadn't. But if you look at how they've played against SC and South Carolina, people have kind of drawn conclusions based on those performances. And then sandwiched between those two was a less than stellar performance against Nicholls State. But since that time, they've really started to identify a pecking order at wide receiver, but they can go 5 deep. They have now found a capable running back with explosive capability in Caden Durham to take some of the pressure off the passing game, and they've always had the super steady and reliable Mason Taylor. They are really deep across the board. We already know how good this offensive line is. Bookended tackles with amazing high-level ceilings. The interior got big physical offensive linemen that can impose their will on the opposing defensive line. So I think more often than not, when looking at LSU's offense against Ole Miss's defense, it'd be a pretty significant advantage in favor of LSU. But that's not the case this year. Ole Miss's defense is allowing 7.5 points per game this year. That's the 3rd fewest in the FBS. Only Ohio State and Texas have allowed fewer points through the first 6 games. So they've done a pretty dang good job on that side of the ball. And their defense, by the way, to take things one step further, they have 24 sacks this season. LSU's offense has allowed just 2. That's tied with Coastal Carolina for the 4th fewest in the FBS behind Army, Georgia Tech, and New Mexico. So considering LSU has already played South Carolina and some other teams that can rush the passer, to have only 2 sacks is pretty dang impressive. But Ole Miss has been pinning their ears back and getting after opposing quarterbacks all season long. They lead the country with those 24 sacks. Question 3. Will LSU's pass rush create some problems? Look, Ole Miss's weakness is their offensive line. They're inconsistent. They have moved guys in and out of the lineup. Their left tackle's been banged up, so they've been starting another guy, but they are rotating at other places. I mean, we've seen multiple guys playing guard. We've seen multiple guys playing center. We've seen multiple guys playing right tackle. Like, they're trying to figure out who are the best five. Who are the five that are the most consistent right now? And when you watch them, the one thing that's always consistent is that Jackson Dart is taking hit after hit after hit after hit. The offensive line has not been good in pass protection. And while they have been pretty good running the football, it's mostly because of the scheme that has allowed them to be successful. The offensive line is a weakness right now for the Rebels. Then you look at the other side. LSU has pressured opponents on 49% of their dropbacks this season. That's the second highest rate in the FBS, behind Penn State, who pressures opposing quarterbacks at a 51% clip. So if you don't know about these guys yet, you need to learn. Braden Swinson on one side, Savion Jones on the other. They're the two best DNs that the national audience probably doesn't know about enough. These guys are the real deal, man. They are really, really good. And if those two guys can get going off the edge, it could be a long day for those Ole Miss tackles and for Jackson Dart. And then question number 4. I don't really like to do this, but I think both these teams are going to go as their quarterback goes. Jackson Dart on one side, Garrett Nussmeier on the other. Now, Jackson Dart has been really good at home. He's 14-3 at Vaught Hemingway. He's 38-5 touchdown to interception ratio, but on the road hasn't been quite as good. He's 13-10 touchdown to interception ratio when he's away from the friendly confines of Vaught Hemingway. He's also just 8-4 in his win-loss. And some of those traveling games, one's at Wake Forest, one's at Tulane. So you got to take some of those with a grain of salt as well, that when they've gone on the road, it hasn't always been against top shelf competition. But Jackson Dart is still very athletic, has an excellent supporting cast, assuming his supporting cast is at 100%, which is a big assumption right now because Trey Harris, his number one wide receiver and arguably the most productive receiver in the sport, he's got an ankle injury. We're not sure just yet if he's going to be able to go. So can Jackson Dart put the team on his back, elevate the play around him, and lead his team to victory? Or will it be Garrett Nussmeier? Now, Gus Nussmeier has thrown for 300 yards in 4 of the first 5 games this year. That's something that was done by only 2 LSU players, Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. Both those guys have a Heisman Trophy sitting on their mantle. When you watch Nussmeier, he anticipates throws, super accurate, has an incredibly good supporting cast. He's tough as nails. He's scrappy in the run game, not a guy that's going to take off, but can keep you honest occasionally with his legs. So I think quarterback play in this one, whichever quarterback plays better, that's ultimately going to lead to who wins the game. A couple trends in the game. LSU is 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 against AP-ranked opponents. Ole Miss is 8-1 against the spread as a road favorite under Lane Kiffin. And 6 of the last 7 meetings between these two teams have gone over the total. I will not be making a pick, but we hope that you tune in 7:30 Eastern time on ABC when we call the game there from Baton Rouge.